Coming up, the story of a metal rock icon who toiled behind the scenes as a roadie for the great Jimi Hendrix. He was fired from a band after being arrested for drug possession. He was a scruff from Newcastle with the most famous chopstache of the rock era who loved to gamble while playing his music fast and vicious. We push up the ante and play with the dead man's hand. Coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever stood in line for 30 minutes or more and spent an arm and a leg for a concert t-shirt, you're going to be right at home in this community. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Also, check us out on Patreon for even more behind-the-scenes footage, uncut interviews, exclusives. That helps us keep it a daily channel. The Ace of Spades has long been considered a symbol of bad luck and impending doom. The dark symbolism of the Ace of Spades goes all the way back to 17th century England, but was immortalized in American folklore in 1876 when Sheriff Wild Bill Hickok was shot in the back of the head by Jack McCall during a poker game with a hand consisting of eights and aces, including the most dangerous card of them all, the Ace of Spades. In 1980, the Ace of Spades was incorporated as the theme of the furious rock anthem created by Lemmy and his band, Motorhead.
The only card I need is the Ace of Spades, the Ace of Spades.
This subsequently been referred to as the death card and further applied in the theater of war.
Pushing up the ante, I know you got to see me. Read 'em and weep.
British Army used the Ace of Spades as an insignia on their uniforms to intimidate their foes. In the Vietnam War, it was common practice to leave an Ace of Spades on the bodies of a fallen enemy by American soldiers. Ace of Spades by Motorhead was written by Lemmy Kilmister, of course, otherwise known as Lemmy. There's also Eddie Clark, who everybody called Fast Eddie, and Motorhead's original drummer Phil Taylor, nicknamed Filthy Animal.
The only card I need is the Ace of Spades, the Ace of Spades.
Now, Wild Bill always insisted on sitting in a corner, going back to that story, with his back against the wall while he played poker so that nobody could sneak up behind him and surprise him. But on the day that he died in 1876, he took the only open seat available, one that left his back exposed to the door of the Nuttall and Man's Saloon in Deadwood, South Dakota. A drunken Jack McCall came up from behind and shot Wild Bill. Not only was Wild Bill gambling with cards, he was gambling with his life. By taking that open seat with his back to the saloon door, it was really easy for Jack McCall to make his move and cowardly shoot Wild Bill from behind.
McCall was soon found hiding in the back of a local butcher shop and apprehended.
When Lemmy began composing the lyrics for Ace of Spades, he wrote down every card and dice metaphor that he could think of. The song is about the thrill of gambling, betting money to beat the odds. It's understood. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. As Lemmy wrote in Ace of Spades, the pleasure is to play.
The pleasure is to play. Ain't no difference what you say.
Lemmy's real name was Lemmy Kilmister. It's hard to think of him now by his given name. Although he claimed that he couldn't remember how he got his nickname, those close to him suggested that the nickname originated from his propensity to borrow money to play slot machines, as in Lemmy a quid till Friday. This was something that young Ian always asked of his friends, so his constant borrowing that sparked the nickname Lemmy. It's pretty cool. In the 1960s, Lemmy was a roadie for Jimi Hendrix. His experience with the guitar god taught him about performing on stage and indulging in stimulants, among other things. In the 70s, Lemmy joined the space rock band Hawkwind as their co-lead singer and bassist, even though he didn't know how to play the bass, at least in the technical sense. Fast Eddie and Filthy Animal spoke many times about how difficult Lemmy was to follow on stage because he really wasn't a bass player. There was no solid bass lines for the rest of the band to follow, they would say. Lemmy just turned his Marshall amp as loud as it would go, and he hit the guitar as hard as he could. His unorthodox and tenacious playing style was one of the many things that that made Lemmy such a distinctive rock and roll figure.
Ain't a hope in hell. Nothing gonna bring us down.
Lemmy was sacked from Hawkwind after an incident at the Canadian border when he was arrested for drug possession. Hawkwind founding members Dave Brock and Richard Chadwick, they were getting tired of Lemmy's erratic behavior, and the arrest at the U.S.-Canadian border was the last straw. Lemmy rolled with the punches, as he always did, and he rebounded by forming Motorhead with Fast Eddie Clarke and Filthy Animal Taylor. Lemmy and Motorhead would go on to achieve much greater success than Hawkwind. In fact, a few years after Motorhead's emergence, Hawkwind actually opened for Motorhead on some of their shows. Now, by the late 70s, Motorhead's proto-thrash music established a loyal following of fans over 3 studio releases. The press dubbed Motorhead the new wave of British heavy metal. It was the precursor to the band's celebrated 4th album, Ace of Spades, and the title track would, of course, be Motorhead's Beacon.
Double up or quit. Double strike or split. The Ace of Spades.
Now, Lemmy claimed to have written Ace of Spades while riding in the back of a transit van, recklessly speeding down a freeway at 90 miles per hour. The song revs up at the starting line with the sound of Lemmy's overdriven bass intro. And then races out with Fast Eddie's high-octane guitar blitz and Filthy Animal's full-throttle drumming attack. Ironically, Eddie Clarke never thought of himself as fast. He admitted that there is only one note that he could play lightning fast, as demonstrated in his dexterous tremolo picking. But no one could argue that Clarke's guitar licks put the motor in Motorhead. Taylor lived up to his nickname. In many ways, he was a beast on the drums, and he was really perfect for Motorhead's danger zone speed of sound. Not long after the recording of the Ace of Spades album, Taylor broke his neck after being lifted above the head of a friend who was bragging about how strong he was. And instead of setting him back down gently, the muscle-bound friend dropped Taylor on his head. Taylor shook off what could have been debilitating for most humans, and he actually resumed playing with Motorhead with the aid of a neck brace. On another occasion, he broke his hand after punching a guy outside of his apartment in London. Once again, Taylor fought through the injury, through the pain, to tour with the band. He used gaffer tape to attach his drumsticks into his hand until he was fully healed. Ace of Spades, the song and the album, was produced by the diminutive Vic Miley, who'd worked with heavy hitters like Led Zeppelin, there was The Who, Fleetwood Mac, Hendrix, and Clapton. Miley was affectionately called Turtle because he looked like one. He was really invaluable in the process of giving Motorhead a more focused, sleeker sound without compromising the band's raw intensity. So what made him so great was that raw intensity. Although Miley was soft-spoken, physically small, he knew how to handle the notoriously difficult Motorhead trio. They're always on the verge of slugging it out with differences in the studio and basically unmanageable.
You win some, lose some, and do the same to me.
Now, the core lineup of Lemmy, Clarke, and Taylor, they praised Miley for bringing out the best of them and convincing them to embrace new ideas for the recording of Ace of Spades. Lemmy, who met Miley when he was still a member of Hawkwind, credited Miley for making him sing instead of just shouting all the time. Taylor thanked Miley for getting him to, quote, play more solid. And Miley pushed Taylor to hit the drums with more purpose and more structure than ever before. Now, Miley was a diabetic. He didn't party with the guys, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, but he was somehow the Motorhead whisperer, if you will. The band would try to get heavy with him, but Miley was unflappable. His hyper-focus and his calming demeanor won the guys over. Now, Miley had what Clarke referred to as his box of tricks. a literal cardboard box full of objects that could provide distinctive sound effects in the studio when they were recording. Items like maracas and rattlesnake tails and a set of wood blocks. I mean, we've all joked about the cowbell used in many 70s rock and pop songs.
Sounding great, but I could have used a little more cowbell.
But in Ace of Spades, it was the wooden version of a cowbell that produced the clacking effect before the song's breakdown by striking the top of the block with a stick. Ace of Spades played at a blistering 144 beats per minute, clocking in with a collision course at 2 minutes and 48 seconds. The track was the only single from the album of the same name. It was released in 1980. As a single, Ace of Spades spent 13 solid weeks on the UK singles chart. Actually peaked at number 15 on its initial run, which is incredible for a song that hard. When Lemmy passed away in December of 2015, Ace of Spades, it had another resurrection and it rose as high as number 9 on the UK singles chart 1 month after Lemmy's death. The song also topped the UK rock and metal singles and album charts the same month. Now, since Lemmy's death, Ace of Spades has unofficially sold more than 350,000 digital copies. To his fans and musicians of all ages, Lemmy was a true rock and roll icon. He was tough as nails, but still really lovable and approachable. With his trademark raspy growl, Lemmy established an unmistakable vocal style, and he established one of the most distinctive images of the rock era without even trying. He wore military jackets and caps that were a cross between pirate hats and cowboy hats. And of course, he sported his famous chopstache. He looked and dressed as he wished, with no intention of becoming a star. His authenticity is one of the things that endeared him to fellow musicians of all genres throughout his career. Lemmy didn't ride in limos, care about five-star hotels or other celebrity privilege. You might say he never lost his hard-edged Newcastle upbringing. He referred to his social status as rock and roll class, snubbing the typical social ranking. The members of Motorhead, they didn't like labels either, even though they were revered by punkers and metalheads alike. The guys always bristled at being referred to as anything other than a rock and roll band. Now, Lemmy has often been anointed as the godfather of metal, a title that he scoffed at. Ozzy Osbourne, the other rock luminary that's been dubbed the godfather of metal, he enlisted Lemmy's expertise as a songwriter for his No More Tears album. Actually, Lemmy co-wrote lyrics for the tracks Hellraiser, Desire, I Don't Want to Change the World, and one of Ozzy's greatest hits, Mama, I'm Coming Home. He actually made more money from royalties generated from that song than he did over his entire tenure as the frontman for Motorhead. Lemmy, known for living as fast and as hard as his music, is one of the most interesting and multifaceted characters of the rock and roll era.
For fools, but that's the way I like it, baby. I don't want to live forever.
You got to check out the documentary Lemmy that came out in 2010, if you haven't already seen it. Learn more about his fascinating life and times.
Lemmy.
Now, the classic lineup trio of Lemmy, Clark, and Taylor, they all passed within a few years of each other. Phil Taylor in November of 2015. Lemmy died just 1 month later in December of 2015. And then Phil Clark in January of 2018. Vic Miley succumbed to cancer in July of 1989. He was only 45 years old. Ace of Spades, released at a pivotal change in the musical landscape in 1980, verified that a band would have mass success without sacrificing bold power and ferocity. After the single peaked in the top 15 on the singles chart in the UK in 1980, the song went through a period of cult-like reverence. But that all changed in 2006, when the track was included in the soundtrack of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 video game. sparking a breakout of discovery by the millennial generation. The game was one of the most played on PlayStation 2 and was a groundbreaker as the first video game in the franchise to have online capabilities. Ace of Spades was among the most popular songs was featured in that game. Ace of Spades has also been featured in Guitar Hero 3. It's also been in movies like Superbad, Zombie Nightmares, starring the original on-screen Batman Adam West, and also Grosse Point Blank. In 2005, Ace of Spades was ranked as the 27th greatest guitar track by Q Magazine. In 2014, New Music Express listed Ace of Spades as number 155 in their 500 greatest songs of all time survey. And not surprisingly, Motorhead's Shredder was named the favorite poker-themed song in a vote of 1,000 subscribers conducted by the online poker site PokerStar. That was in 2019. It actually crushed the runner-up, Poker Face by Lady Gaga. Go figure. Ace of Spades has been covered hundreds of times, but the most unique interpretation of the song is played on church bells, of all things. You got to check out this version of Ace of Spades by Dutch musicians, guitarist Jitse Zonneveld, I hope I said that right, and keyboardist bell ringer Frank Steins. Motorhead's Ace of Spades is one of the few tracks that has been universally adopted as one of the most inspirational by all of the subcultures of rock artists. It's a caution to the wind, let it ride detonator that fueled the fire for every band with the passion and drive to create rebellious, stick it to the man rock and roll.
I see it in your eyes. Take one look and die.
The legend of the Ace of Spades began in the Old West and flourished as a credo of the rock era when Motorhead put the phrase to music in 1980, giving it a whole new meaning. I remember the first time that I heard Ace of Spades, or Motorhead for that matter. I was in the 5th grade. I had this friend named Kelly, and we were both into metal. We were always exploring, trying to find anything harder, louder, faster. We were listening to Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Sabbath, on and on and on, anything we could get our hands on. Now, Kelly had an older brother who was in high school, and he would always bring home new records and cassettes, hard rock, heavy metal, whatever. One day, Kelly walked up to my locker and he said, "Dude, you are never going to believe this song. It is the raddest metal song I've ever heard. It's going to make your ears bleed." And he held up this cassette in the air with a label that said, Motorhead. He slammed it in my hand. He said, "You have to hear this band." Now, I was over the moon. I couldn't wait to hear the song. I was always up for some kind of new music discovery. Fortunately, I had to go through a day of school. I wanted to get to a place where I was all alone to hear this song, and also my batteries were out on my Walkman. I'll never forget it. I ran home, slammed my door shut, put in some new batteries. Since I was always using my Walkman, I was always running out. And I slammed the tape into the deck, and I carefully placed the headphones over my ears. Remember, I pressed play on my Walkman, and within a few seconds, I was thrown into the greatest rock and roll roller coaster of my young life. My friend wasn't lying. He wasn't even telling a tall tale. It really felt like my ears were bleeding. I mean, Lemmy pounded him into oblivion. I kept rewinding it and listening to it again and again, completely in awe and bewilderment.
The only gun I need is the Ace of Spades. The Ace of Spades.
Jack Black had it right when he preached the word.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Motorhead. Oh, what are they teaching this place?
It was definitely a game-changing song for me. So I have to say to Phil Taylor, to Eddie Clark, and to Lemmy, the classic triumvirate of Motorhead, we salute you.
Thank you very much.
Leave us a comment about Lemmy and Motorhead and this rock classic Ace of Spades. Do you remember the first time that you heard it? What was your reaction? What are your memories of Motorhead? What are some of the feelings that you had as you were listening to this? Let us know. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe below so you never miss out on a video. It's all about keeping the music alive. It's what we're all about. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.